Hi, welcome to Chicago Reacts. I'm Sonia. This is Kit. Today we will be reacting to World War I, 1914 by Epic History.
That's right, folks. We are going into the big one, the one that started it all, WW1. So be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to check out some of our fun videos here at Chicago Reacts. And if there's a video you want us to react to, just type it in the comment section below. That exactly, precisely and exactly. And we will get to it as soon as possible. And be sure to support Epic History because they are doing some quality content. I think we should get started then.
We should get started.
You do it.
It works.
Okay.
So anytime you want to pause conversation, pause button.
Gotcha. Okay, theme song.
1914. The great powers of Europe are divided into two rival alliances, the Triple Entente, France, Britain, and Russia, united by fear and suspicion of Germany, Europe's new strongest power.
Yes, with this dramatic
And the
effect.
Triple Alliance, Germany, which fears encirclement by its rivals, Austro-Hungary, clinging on to a fragile empire, and Italy, seeking gains at French expense.
Come on,
The
Italians,
spark
be better.
comes on the 28th of June in the city of Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, is assassinated by a 19-year-old Slav nationalist named Gavrilo Princip.
Wait, 19-year-old
Yeah,
assassination.
Okay, so the long story short is that he was part of a group that wanted to basically have their nation free from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And his early initial attempts by him and his fantastic friends ended terribly. And so by an odd chance of circumstances, while eating a perfectly nice ham sandwich, he sees the Archduke and his wonderful, beautiful wife drive on by. He decides to drop his ham sandwich and shoot them both.
Okay.
And that shot is basically what led to this crisis. And the Archduke's, I believe, his supposed final words were, "Everything's going to be okay.
Really?
Everything's going to be okay." And spoiler alert, it's not.
It's not going to be okay.
No. Oh,
Kinda
no.
figured.
Oh, no.
All right, let's play this.
Austro-Hungary accuses its Balkan rival Serbia of having aided the assassin
like, I
and
didn't even
sends an
do it.
ultimatum demanding humiliating concessions. Serbia rejects the ultimatum, and Austro-Hungary declares war. Within hours, Austrian forces are shelling Belgrade.
Guys,
The
come
Russian
on.
Tsar, Nicholas II, feels honor-bound to defend Serbia, a fellow Slav nation, and orders the Russian army to mobilize.
Of course.
Everyone chill for a
German
minute.
Emperor Wilhelm II has promised his support to Austro-Hungary.
Okay.
He and his generals see conflict with Russia as inevitable, and the sooner the better, as Russian strength grows year on year. Russian mobilization is used to justify German mobilization,
It's always hit
followed
first
by a
with those
declaration of war on Russia.
Yeah.
Germany knows war with Russia means war with Russia's ally, France. It has developed the Schlieffen Plan to meet this threat of a war
Russia
on
want to
two
take on
fronts.
everybody, huh?
First,
Germany
its
want- I
armies
think
will
it's Germany
advance
that's trying to do
rapidly
all
through
of this.
Oh, is it?
Belgium to encircle
Yes.
and destroy French armies near Paris and win a quick victory. Then its forces can move east to deal with Russia, whose huge army will take much longer to mobilize.
By the way, from our good old days of watching the Napoleon videos, the one thing is that's very clear, even in this day and age, and that is you don't invade Russia unless you're Genghis Khan and his fantastic friends.
I agree.
Yeah, you stay out of Russia.
Because that's us.
No one's ever done it except Genghis Khan and his fantastic friends.
And so Germany declares war on France. 6 million men are now marching to war across
Oh
Europe.
God, 6 million.
It didn't have to be this
Italy,
way.
however, remains neutral. The terms of the Triple Alliance
Fine.
Right,
don't
okay.
bind it to
Okay,
join an
got
offensive
get a little bit out of
war.
pocket.
The United States also
is like, I'll
declares
take-
its neutrality.
You guys got it.
President Wilson and the American public have no desire to get entangled in Europe's
Of
war.
course.
Britain is
Wilson.
France's ally, but at first it's not clear if it will join the war against Germany. But when German troops invade Belgium, whose neutrality Britain has guaranteed, an ultimatum is sent from
Britain,
London to
no.
Berlin, demanding they withdraw. It's ignored, and Britain declares war.
Opening moves.
Yes. Oh, the horrible crisis.
A British expeditionary force lands in France, while the German invasion is held up for crucial days by Belgian resistance at the fortress city of Liège. German troops commit several massacres against Belgian civilians. The atrocities are inflated by Allied propaganda and help turn public opinion in neutral countries against Germany. France, unaware of Germany's great encircling attack, launches Plan 17, an offensive into German territory. But in the Battle of the Frontiers, they're driven back with enormous losses on both sides.
Why keep going?
The British Expeditionary Force clashes with the German army at Mons,
That's a little bit more
but the
interesting.
British are
It's just-
heavily
it's
outnumbered
old antiquity
and soon
that's
join
being
the French in retreat.
introduced to modern warfare.
The Allies
Of
make
course.
their stand at the River Marne, 40 miles outside Paris. Their desperate counterattack saves the city and drives the Germans back. Both sides suffer 250,000 casualties.
Rest in peace.
The race to the sea begins as both sides try to outflank each other to the north. A series of clashes leads to the First Battle of Ypres.
Why keep? If it's all those casualties, I don't understand why they keep.
Okay, so the short rundown of all these casualties is that the sad fact is World War I was the introduction to modern warfare, machine guns, tanks, even aerial combat, and the problem is that the mentality amongst some of the generals, and again, to all the history buffs, I'm just giving a short rundown. It's just they were using honor-bound tactics, ancient tactics that were no longer viable in this modern day and age of warfare, especially with the introduction of machine guns, tanks, and other chemical warfare as well, which was a new thing. Well, not so much of a new thing, but it just was just so devastating that no one really expected things to get out of hand. And
then they
there were many politicians and generals who were saying, well, the war will end in like 6 months or a year. And that was not the case. And because things were so aggressive and because of German tactic, especially going into Belgium and countering the Allies, it just became a war of attrition, and humanity was at its worst, unfortunately.
Oh God!
So we're only in the first year.
And I that's why I said okay.
We got 3 more years
Oh,
of so much fun.
All right.
where the Allies desperately cling on and prevent a German breakthrough. There are more heavy losses on both sides.
And there was no peace
The
movement.
two armies then dig in along the entire 350-mile front, seeking shelter from deadly machine gun fire and artillery shells. Trench warfare has begun.
The war at sea.
Oh no.
British warships win the first naval battle of the war at Heligoland Bight, sinking 3 German cruisers. Britain has the most powerful navy in the world, 29 modern battleships to Germany's 19. They now impose a naval blockade on Germany, preventing contraband goods, including food, from reaching it by sea. The aim is to bring Germany's economy to its knees and force it to surrender. But a week later, the British cruiser HMS Pathfinder becomes the first victim in history of a lethal new weapon, the submarine-launched torpedo. German submarines, or U-boats, have a surface range of 9,000 miles and can attack undetected from beneath the waves. They herald a
The
deadly
wolves of
new
the
challenge
sea.
to Britain's
Sea.
command of the seas.
The Eastern Front.
Yes, the Russians. The Russians are coming.
On the Eastern Front, Russian armies invade East Prussia. But they blunder into disaster at the Battle of Tannenberg, where General von Hindenburg and his chief of staff, Erich Ludendorff, mastermind a brilliant German victory, taking 90,000 prisoners and destroying an entire Russian army. The Russians contribute to their own defeat by transmitting uncoded wireless messages. A second massive German
Hold on.
victory.
This is why NordVPN was created, because you got to protect all your information out there. No, we are not sponsored by NordVPN.
At Masurian Lakes forces the Russians into retreat. In just 6 weeks, the Russian army suffers nearly 1/3
Man.
casualties.
Oh my goodness.
Meanwhile, Austro-Hungary's invasion of Serbia suffers a humiliating reverse at the Battle of Tser. Austro-Hungary's offensive against Russia also ends in disaster and retreat,
does.
with the loss of more than 300,000 men. The fortress town of Przemysl is cut off and besieged by the Russians. The Germans are forced to come to the rescue, launching a diversionary attack towards Warsaw. It leads to weeks of brutal winter fighting around the Polish city of Łódź, but there is no clear winner. Meanwhile, the Turkish Ottoman Empire has joined the Central Powers, declaring war on its old enemy, Russia. Turkish warships bombard the Russian ports of Odessa and Sevastopol, while in the Caucasus, Russian troops cross the Turkish frontier.
The world at war.
The whole world is at war.
Oh, God.
It didn't have to be this way.
Beyond
didn't.
Europe, the war rages on the world's oceans and in far-flung European colonies. German troops cross into British East Africa, modern Kenya, and occupy Taveta, while
They're just
Allied
jumping
forces
all over
seize
the
the
place.
German colony of Togoland, modern Togo.
Okay.
But British forces invading German Cameroon are defeated at Garoua and Nsangakong, while a 3,000-strong force attacking German Southwest Africa, modern Namibia, is captured at Sanfontaine.
I mean,
A month later, British landings at Tanga end in chaos and defeat at the hands of a much smaller German force led by Colonel von Lettow-Vorbeck. Cut off from Germany, Lettow-Vorbeck goes on to wage a highly successful guerrilla war against the Allies, tying down huge numbers of troops. In Asia, Japan honors its treaty with Britain and declares war on Germany. Japanese
Okay.
forces go on to seize the German.
so everybody's joined. So they weren't involved at first.
And this is the early stages of Japan entering into the modern era and becoming the empire that it would soon become, especially that we fought against World War II. So Japan is just getting started. For a long time, they were an isolationist country, but only then when they started trading more with Western powers, especially during the Meiji Restoration, then they started really getting involved, and this was their chance to expand their empire even further. And plus, they had an earlier conflict with Russia, so it was in their interest to kind of, maybe honor the treaty with Britain and then in many ways expand further into building their empire up. Then the Ottomans as well, they're the remnants. Well, they occupied what remained of Byzantium, which was Eastern Rome. So this was their chance to go up against their enemy, Russia, as well. But the whole world was about to be shaken to its core, and plus all the colonies, especially on the continent of Africa, there was a lot of unfortunate war crimes and devastation that happened to a lot of the people there that were in the German, British, or French colonies. And sadly, this was the beginning of the end of the old empires. Well, not fully
naval
quite
base
until after
at
World War II.
Tsingtao,
Wow.
the German colonies of Samoa
And
and
then
New
Australia.
Guinea surrender to troops from New
Jeez.
Zealand and Australia.
Well, they weren't lying when they
But
said
in
the world at
Pacific,
war.
off the coast of Chile, German Admiral von Spee's powerful East Asia squadron sinks 2 British cruisers at the Battle of Coronel. Both ships are lost with all hands. 5 weeks later, he runs into a British naval task force at the Falkland Islands. 4 of the 5 German cruisers are sunk. Von Spee goes down with his flagship. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, British troops seize control of the Ottoman port of Basra, securing access to the vital Persian oil that fuels the British fleet.
Winter is coming.
That winter, Austrian troops finally capture Belgrade. But the Serbs then counterattack and drive them back once more. The fighting in Serbia has already cost around 200,000 casualties on each side. In the North Sea, German warships mount a hit-and-run raid against English coastal towns, shelling Hartlepool, Whitby and Scarborough, and killing more than 100 civilians.
Oh, wow.
On the Western Front, the French launched their first major offensive against the German lines. But the First Battle of Champagne leads to small gains at a cost of 90,000 casualties.
Not worth it.
While in the Caucasus, an Ottoman offensive through the mountains in midwinter ends in disaster at Sarikamish. Turkish casualties total 60,000, many frozen to death.
Oh, man.
On the Western Front, that
So
first
many
Christmas
casualties.
is
It's
marked in
ridiculous.
some sectors by a short truce and games of football in no man's land, the killing zone between the trenches.
Oh yes, the one time there was peace. There's a lot to unpack there.
There was
Yeah.
so many casualties.
Well, you know, I think especially as we get further into these series, we're going to see really the true cost of this war and how it eventually led up to the second one. And the thing is, looking at even at the map, you know, because you could read about this, you could watch documentaries too, but again, that map is extremely detailed. And the sad fact is that this is a conflict that no one really thought would happen. Like everyone, there was the assumption that the war would end quick.
Yeah.
But the whole world just lit up in flames, and this was
One after another, yeah.
yeah, and sadly, it didn't have to be this way.
It didn't.
It didn't.
Of course, war never has to be war, but of course, you know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out our other videos, okay?
Yes.
See you next time.
Bye bye.